I'm going to start on a sad note here, Mitch, and that's the passing of Joan Frederick, who was a football senior staff administrative assistant for over 50 years for K-State football. What are your memories of her?
Well, I think I called her Joan of Arc. I mean, she was such a hard worker, but such a bright spot of that department when it wasn't always easy to be bright. People remember her and think of her during the Coach Snyder climb and the glory days, but she was also there with Stan Parrish and Jim Dickey and going on back, and saw a lot of sad things. There was people that came and gone, relationships that she built, but she was the constant. In my first year as the voice of the Wildcats, I did sideline for a year, but one of the first people that really, made me feel welcome and a part of it, and we had so many long discussions about football and life and everything else, but she kept the pilot light lit because of her spirit, because of her dedication, and her love for Kansas State. But yes, it was so good when Coach Snyder became successful because she got her reward, and she got to be a part of a successful program. But wow, such a bigger part than the common fan would know. But those who knew her well, you probably heard from a lot of them or seen it on social media. She was phenomenal.
Yeah, no doubt. Wyatt Thompson was on Monday, and he shared some thoughts about her, and it was an emotional time for sure when we were talking about Joanne. She's actually going to be honored by the K-State Band pregame for the Texas Bowl. That's going to be a very cool thing that the K-State Band will be doing for her. Meanwhile, we learned yesterday about the passing of John Madden. It was not too long ago. We were actually talking about all the famous people you had met. I'd imagine John Madden was one of them, was he?
Yeah, and it was so interesting because, as a little kid, I remember John Madden hating him. He was the Raiders coach. And it was about the time where Hank Stramman was running out of his time in Kansas City and Len Dawson was nearing the end of his career, and the Raiders basically took over the division. Interesting, the Chiefs won their sixth straight AFC West title last Sunday, and I mentioned many times it was history-making because no team in the division had won it 6 times. Well, he won it 5 times in the 70s with the Raiders. But then later, becoming a broadcaster, I would see him many times. The crew would come in the day before a game, and I'd bump into him. We'd have a casual, short conversation, but one where he was very much like Coach Reed in the fact that he gets the human spirit. And that's why he was so successful as a commentator, was he related to the viewer and the listener to the point where they felt like he was one of them. He wasn't condescending. He wasn't talking down to him. He didn't big time you. He was awesome. And then, of course, with the video game, he transcended all the way from the baby boomers to Gen Zs. And there's very few humans that have ever been able to transcend generations like that.
When's the last time you picked up a controller and played Madden?
Oh, training camp. I just got into a game. Some of the 65 TPT crew had it set up, and they're like, hey, sit down and have a go. So, yeah, I'll pair them up a little bit. I'd rather play the college football game, though. I've just haven't been as much a Madden as I'm in the old EA Sports, which stopped, I believe, in the 2013 season. But, yeah, I'll take over teams, and I'll crank it up in the off season or a bye week, or if I get a couple hours, I'll go after it. But not necessarily in Madden. But there'll be times, and they'll entice me into a game of Madden, and, yeah, I'll have at it.
Here's a good question for you. So you're playing somebody in Madden. They pick the Chiefs.
Honestly, it's a great thing to play for people who cover sports if they didn't play sports, because it's like a flight simulator. But you got to make it worth something, and you got to make it realistic, and you've got to treat it correctly. But then you'll get an idea of, hey, a 3rd and 8 call. What do I do here against this defense? And that's helpful in covering teams.
So if the opponent you're playing picks the Chiefs, who does Mitch Holthus pick to play with in Madden?
Well, it's not going to be an AFC team, so I'd have to go to an NFC team. So who did I pick? They weren't the Chiefs. I wouldn't let them be the Chiefs. Wouldn't do that. I can't remember who I played. But if I had to pick a favorite NFC team, who would it be? Probably the Saints. Yeah, Saints or I'll go with the Saints.
All right. I would personally pick the Cowboys. They're kind of good right now, even after some 19-9.
You gotta pick something out. Like, that's everybody's gonna pick the Cowboys.
I mean, come on, Mitch, they're good. Yeah, they had a bad day at Arrowhead Stadium, but healthier.
Bad day at Arrowhead Stadium. Yeah, he's gonna make a run in the playoffs before anybody looks past it. Are they 8-8 this year? No, they're not. Oh, okay, good.
Hey, they're battling for that top seed in the NFC.
Yes, they are. I'm with you on that. So go for it, buddy. And then just keep Jerry, just keep Jerry away from it. Jerry, go drive around for a while, for like 2 months. Don't call plays. Don't get in McCarthy's head. Don't give some sound bite that you doubt if that can win a playoff game. Just go drive around.
Well, somebody who didn't have a bad day, and let's go to the last game, this last win for the Chiefs, their 8th straight win, and they locked up the 6th straight AFC West championship, beating the Steelers 36-10. How great was it to see Byron Pringle be the star with his 75 yards and 2 touchdowns?
He has become so valuable to this team beyond just that. I've talked about, with you guys really since he's been a Chief, but as he's grown into his role, his value for this team is beyond the obvious. He blocks like a champion. People overlook, I put it on Twitter, I don't know if you saw it, the Charger walk-off, the 34-yard, the GoPro, I'm going crazy in the booth, everybody's talking about that. But if you watch the play, the key block is Pringle. The guy that could catch Kelce's coming from the back. He didn't see him. Could even knock the ball out, changed history forever. Pringle goes and just kind of shadow blocks him, and Kelce's on his way. But he does that stuff in every game. He'll do 5 or 6 little sneaky things that help you win. And we may not notice them all, but I tell you, Coach Reed does. And then when he gets out there as a receiver, it shows you the trust that Patrick Mahomes has in him. When Patrick was doing hey, I got all this time to throw, he's thinking Pringle there. And the play he made twisting his body on the comeback is the best play he's made in his NFL career, Pringle, other than the play he made against Detroit, which saved that game in 2019. There's way more value to him than people realize.
With the Chiefs now winning 8 in a row, have they now returned to the top of the mountain, being the team that everybody wants to beat? They're back to being the best team in the NFL?
I'm not sure they ever left that realm because it was everybody's priority to beat them. And that's why early in the year when you're getting the shot from Bills and they're going to beat the Ravens if they don't turn it over, but you get the shot early from the Chargers and the Titans, and they beat us in the playoffs of the AFC Championship game, so we're going to load it up and go after them. And then people were too premature in saying they're dead, they're gone, it's over. They figured Mahomes out. Michael Irvin smashing pumpkins, not the group, but the logo with the pumpkin smash, and Brian Boldinger's like, this is a washed-up ex-champion, and like, what are we talking about here? And then now they're going gulp because this team right now, the question is this as good a team as Andy Reid has had in Kansas City or a more complete team? And it would be hard to argue against that, statistically or even the eye test.
Clearly, it's all over the NFL dealing with COVID-19 positive cases. It's, the Chiefs are dealing with some right now, but also dealing with a couple of injuries. So when it comes to like Tyrann Mathieu, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who were both banged up in the Saints or the Steelers game, rather, possibility of them coming back for the Sunday game against Bengals.
Tyrann possible, CEH improbable. In fact, he might be shut down until the playoffs. That's just me, but I'm glad he's even going to be available in the playoffs because it's interesting because who fell on him. And it was a clean play, but it was Isaiah Loudermilk, the kid from Howard, Kansas. He played at West Elk High School down in the Flint Hills and went on to Wisconsin, fight song. But he was the guy that landed right on top of Clyde and jacked up his shoulder. But honestly, with the COVID situation, it's early in the week, and you guys we didn't talk last week. I mean, it was DEFCON 3 last week, and it wasn't even day to day or hour to hour. It was like minute to minute. Like, who's on and who's off? Well, they're off. Who's going to be on for the off guy? I mean, it was nuts. I even asked Coach, I said, this isn't an off-air conversation, off Zoom. And basically I just said, do you have an idea? He goes, I don't. I do not know in the morning, like, who's up or who's down until that day. And yet he prepared a team to play and beat the Steelers. It also goes back to the Pringle conversation, or DiCaprio Boodle, or a Wiley, who played great in this game, or a Sorensen. There's 13 undrafted guys on this roster, a fourth of them. 25% of this Chiefs roster was not even drafted. And yet, a lot of those guys came to the forefront to be the main players in the victory over the Steelers. It says a lot about the genius of Andy Reid and the way he prepares this team, not just in training camp, but even in the summer OTAs. I've said to you before, there's no wasted days if you're going to be a part of the Chiefs. And that pays off in a game like last Sunday.
Yeah, it's just so hard to predict with COVID-19 and who's going to be able to come back and win. It's not even a fair question to ask you. I could have asked about Travis Kelce. When do you think he's going to be back? Those are just impossible to answer right now.
Yep. Although I think Kelce will be back this week. But what we are seeing is a bit of a dynamic, even with Tyreek, who played early, and then they pulled him out. But Chris Jones even mentioned it, that he didn't have his wind. He got winded. So even if you're coming off the COVID list in the case of Kelce, then can he be full-on Travis Kelce, full throttle this week? You know he's going to give it all he's got because the game's so big, and he's in Cincinnati, where he played college football. And this has been a bad spot for the Chiefs historically, and Kelce knows all that. But you also have to realize that these guys coming off the COVID list, that's where the problem is playing Madden, because you don't have the human element. I always tell everybody, hey, go run around the block 3 times as hard as you can, then come back in and be super tired and play Madden, and you might get a more realistic thought of it. But these guys coming off the COVID list may not have 100% stamina that we all think they should have or could have.
All right, Mitch, we're running on to a break here. Appreciate your time. 9-6 Bengals on the road for the Chiefs up next. That's a Sunday noon kickoff here on K-Man. Voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. Appreciate your time.
Last time the Chiefs won in Cincinnati, who was the K-State coach? Answer, Jim Dickey.
Wow.
Chiefs have not won in Cincinnati since 1984. George Book.